The shadows of Willow Creek. The summer sun hung high in the sky as I stepped off the bus, the heat wrapping around me like a thick blanket. My name is Alex, and I was 12 years old, visiting my grandmother in the small town of Willow Creek for the first time. I had heard stories about the town from my parents, how it was quaint and charming, with friendly neighbors and beautiful landscapes. But as I looked around, I felt a strange unease settle in my stomach. Willow Creek was picturesque, with its white picket fences, blooming gardens, and old oak trees lining the streets, but there was something about the stillness that felt off. The air was thick with silence, and the only sound was the distant chirping of crickets. I shrugged it off, reminding myself that I was here to enjoy my summer vacation. My grandmother, a sprightly woman with silver hair and a warm smile, greeted me with open arms. "I'm so glad you're here," she exclaimed, pulling me into a tight hug. "I've got so many fun things planned for us." As we drove to her house, I took in the sights of the town. The streets were lined with quaint shops and cozy homes, but there was an unsettling emptiness. I noticed that many houses had their curtains drawn tight, and I didn't see many people outside. It was as if the town was holding its breath. My grandmother's house was an old Victorian with creaky floorboards and a wraparound porch. It was charming in its own way, but the shadows seemed to linger longer in the corners of the rooms. "It's a bit dusty, but I hope you'll find it cozy," she said, leading me inside. The interior was filled with antique furniture and family photos, but there was an odd chill in the air. I tried to shake off the feeling as I settled into my room, which was adorned with floral wallpaper and a small bed. The window overlooked the backyard, where a dense thicket of trees loomed ominously. "Don't wander too far into the woods, Alex," my grandmother warned, her voice suddenly serious. "There are some places that aren't safe." "Why not?" I asked, curiosity piqued. She hesitated, her eyes clouding with memories. "Just be careful. The woods have their secrets." That evening, after a hearty dinner, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The house creaked and groaned as the wind picked up outside. I could hear the rustling of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. Sleep eluded me, and I found myself staring out the window into the darkened backyard. Suddenly, I noticed a flicker of movement among the trees. I squinted, trying to make out what it was. A shadow darted between the trunks, too quick to identify. My heart raced, and I pulled the covers up to my chin, convincing myself it was just my imagination. The next morning, I decided to explore the backyard. The sun was shining, and the air felt fresh. I wandered toward the edge of the woods, where the trees stood tall and foreboding. The underbrush was thick, and I could hear the faint sound of rustling leaves. As I stepped closer, I noticed a narrow path leading into the woods. It looked overgrown, as if it hadn't been used in years. My curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to follow it. The path wound deeper into the forest, the sunlight filtering through the leaves above. I felt a mix of excitement and trepidation as I ventured further. The air grew cooler, and the sounds of the outside world faded away, replaced by the rustling of branches and the occasional chirp of a bird. After a few minutes of walking, I stumbled upon a clearing. In the center stood an old, dilapidated cabin, its windows shattered and the door hanging off its hinges. It looked like it had been abandoned for years. I felt a shiver run down my spine, but I was drawn to it. I approached cautiously, peering inside. The interior was dark and musty, filled with broken furniture and debris. As I stepped over the threshold, I felt a strange energy in the air, as if the cabin was alive with memories. Suddenly, I heard a soft whisper, barely audible. "Help me." I froze, my heart racing. I looked around, but there was no one there. The whisper seemed to come from the shadows, echoing in my mind. I backed away slowly, feeling a sense of dread wash over me. That evening, I shared my discovery with my grandmother over dinner. She paused, her fork hovering above her plate. "You found the old cabin?" she asked, her voice tight. "Yeah, it was creepy. I heard a voice," I replied, trying to gauge her reaction. She sighed, her expression turning serious. "That cabin has a dark history, Alex. Many years ago, a family lived there. They say the mother went mad after losing her children in the woods. Some believe her spirit still lingers, searching for them." "Is that why you told me not to go into the woods?" I asked, feeling a chill creep up my spine. "Yes," she said softly. "The woods can be dangerous, especially for children. There are stories of people getting lost, never to return." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. The thought of the cabin and the whispers haunted me as I lay in bed that night. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me from the shadows. The next day, I decided to return to the cabin despite my grandmother's warnings. I felt an inexplicable pull toward it, as if it was calling to me. I packed a small backpack with a flashlight and some snacks, determined to uncover its secrets. As I made my way back through the woods, the atmosphere felt different. The air was thick with tension, and the shadows seemed to stretch longer. I reached the cabin and pushed the door open, the hinges creaking in protest. Inside, the darkness enveloped me. I switched on my flashlight, illuminating the dust-covered furniture and broken glass. The whispers returned, echoing in the corners of the room. "Help me, help me." I felt a chill run down my spine, but I pressed on, searching for any clues about the family that once lived there. I rummaged through the debris, finding old photographs and letters, but they were too faded to read. Suddenly, I heard a loud crash from the back of the cabin. My heart raced as I turned to see what it was. The sound had come from a small room at the back, partially hidden by a fallen beam. I hesitated, fear gripping me, but curiosity pushed me forward. I squeezed through the narrow opening and found myself in a small, dimly lit room. The air was stale, and the walls were lined with old, peeling wallpaper. In the center of the room stood a dusty mirror, its surface cracked and tarnished. As I approached the mirror, I felt a strange energy pulsing in the air. I reached out to touch it, but as my fingers brushed the surface, a cold wave washed over me. I gasped as the reflection shifted, showing not just my image, but a glimpse of the past. I saw a woman standing in the room, her face twisted in anguish. She was calling out, her voice filled with desperation. "Where are you? Please come back!" I stumbled back, heart racing. The whispers grew louder, drowning out my thoughts. The whispers grew louder, drowning out my thoughts. "Help me, help me, help me!" I turned to run, but the door slammed shut behind me. Panic surged through me as I pounded on the door, shouting for help. The whispers intensified, swirling around me like a storm. In a moment of sheer terror, I remembered the flashlight in my backpack. I fumbled for it, my hand shaking as I turned it on. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the room. I could see the mirror again, and the woman's reflection was still there, her eyes pleading, and the woman's reflection was still there, her eyes pleading. "Please," I shouted, desperation creeping into my voice. "What do you want?" The whispers quieted for a moment, and I felt a strange connection to the woman. "Find them, find my children," she whispered, her voice echoing in my mind. I felt a surge of determination. "I will help you," I promised, my heart racing. "Just let me out." With renewed strength, I charged at the door, slamming my shoulder against it. It creaked and groaned, but I pushed harder, fueled by fear and adrenaline. Finally, the door gave way, and I stumbled out into the main room, gasping for breath. I ran back through the woods, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't stop until I reached my grandmother's house, collapsing on the porch, trembling. "What happened?" she asked, rushing to my side, concern etched on her face. "I saw her! The woman from the cabin! She was looking for her children!" I gasped, trying to catch my breath. My grandmother's expression turned grave. "You shouldn't have gone there, Alex. The past is not something to be disturbed." "I have to help her," I insisted, my voice shaking. "She needs to find her kids." My grandmother sighed, her eyes filled with sadness. "The children were lost in the woods many years ago. They were never found." The mother was heartbroken, and she lost her mind searching for them. It's said that her spirit still wanders, searching for closure. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. What if I can not tighten in my stomach? What if I can help her? What if I can find them? "Alex, it's dangerous to meddle with the past," she warned. "You don't know what you're dealing with." But I couldn't shake the feeling that I had to try. That night, I lay in bed, the whispers echoing in my mind. I knew I had to return to the cabin to uncover the truth and help the woman find peace. The next day, I gathered my courage and returned to the cabin. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the forest floor. I felt a mix of fear and determination as I approached the dilapidated structure. Inside, the air was thick with tension. I made my way back to the hidden room, the mirror standing ominously in the center. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. "Show me," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Show me where they are." As I touched the mirror, the surface rippled and the room transformed. I saw flashes of the past, children playing in the woods, laughter echoing through the trees. But then the scene shifted, and I saw the woman again, her face twisted in anguish. "Where are you?" she cried, her voice filled with despair. "Please come back." I felt a surge of empathy for her pain. "I'm here to help you," I shouted, desperation creeping into my voice. "Tell me where to find them." The mirror flickered, and I saw a vision of a small clearing deep in the woods, a place I hadn't. With renewed determination, I raced out of the cabin and into the woods, following the vision in my mind. The trees loomed overhead, their branches twisting like skeletal fingers. I pushed through the underbrush, my heart pounding in my chest. After what felt like an eternity, I stumbled into a small clearing. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, illuminating the ground. In the center, I saw a small, weathered stone, an unmarked grave. I felt a chill wash over me as I approached. "Is this where they are?" I whispered, kneeling beside the stone. "Are you here?" Suddenly, the air grew cold, and I felt a presence behind me. I turned, and there she was, the woman from the cabin, her face filled with sorrow. "Thank you for finding them," she whispered, tears streaming down her face, filled with sorrow. "Thank you for finding them," she whispered. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. "I'm here to help you," I said, my voice trembling. "You can find peace now." But as I looked around, I realized something was wrong. The shadows in the clearing began to shift, swirling around me like a storm. "No, you can't leave," the woman cried, her voice filled with desperation. Panic surged through me as the shadows closed in, wrapping around my body. I struggled to break free, but it felt like the darkness was pulling me down. "Help!" I shouted, but my voice was swallowed by the encroaching gloom. "Stay with me," the woman pleaded, her eyes wide with fear. "You can't leave me." I felt a surge of despair as I realized I was trapped. The shadows were alive, feeding off my fear. I could see the faces of the lost children in the darkness, their eyes filled with sorrow. "No!" I screamed, fighting against the darkness. "I won't let you take me." With every ounce of strength, I pushed back against the shadows, focusing on the woman's face. You need to let go, I shouted. You need to find peace. The shadows hesitated, and for a moment I felt a flicker of hope. But then they surged forward, overwhelming me. I felt myself being pulled into the darkness, the woman's cries echoing in my mind. I awoke in my grandmother's house, gasping for breath. The sunlight streamed through the window, and I felt disoriented. Had it all been a dream? I glanced around, but the memories of the clearing and the woman lingered in my mind. "Alex, are you okay?" My grandmother called from the kitchen, her voice filled with concern. I think so," I replied, still shaken. I went to the cabin again. She rushed into the room, her expression serious. "You shouldn't have gone back there. It's not safe. I saw her," I said, my voice trembling. "The woman, she was looking for her child," my voice trembling. "The woman, she was looking for her children." "You need to forget about it, Alex. It's too dangerous to meddle with the past." But I couldn't shake the feeling that I had to help her. That night, I lay in bed, the whispers echoing in my mind. I knew I had to return to the woods to confront the darkness once and for all. Days turned into weeks, and I tried to return to normalcy, but the haunting memories lingered. I could still hear the whispers, the cries of the lost children echoing in my mind. I felt the connection to the woman, a bond that I couldn't explain. I often found myself staring out the window, looking toward the woods. The shadows seemed to stretch longer, and I could feel their pull. I knew I had to confront the darkness to help the woman find peace. But as I stood at the edge of the woods, I felt a chill wash over me. The whispers grew louder, swirling around me like a storm. "Help me, help me, help me." From that day on, I still remained thinking about it. The shadows of Willow Creek had left their mark on me, a scar that would never fully heal. I could feel the woman's presence, a reminder of the pain and loss that lingered in the darkness. And sometimes, when the silence pressed close, I could still hear her voice, whispering in the dark, "Help me." The haunting never truly ended. It simply became a part of me, a shadow that would follow me wherever I went. I had faced the darkness, but I knew it would always be there, lurking just beyond the light. The lodge on Hollow Hill. The rain fell in sheets, drumming against the windshield of my car as I navigated the winding road leading to Hollow Hill Lodge. I had been driving for hours, and the fatigue was beginning to weigh heavily on my eyelids. The lodge was supposed to be a quaint little getaway, a place to escape the chaos of city life. But as I approached, the towering trees seemed to close in around me, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The lodge itself loomed ahead, a weathered structure with peeling paint and a flickering neon sign that read, "Vacancy." I pulled into the gravel parking lot, the crunch of stones beneath my tires echoing in the stillness. As I stepped out of the car, a chill ran down my spine, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Inside, the lobby was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of damp wood and something else, something metallic. A heavy-set man stood behind the reception desk, his face obscured by shadows. He looked up as I entered, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Welcome to Hollow Hill Lodge," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "What can I do for you?" "I'd like to check in, please," I replied, forcing a smile despite the unease creeping over me. He tapped a few keys on the old computer, his brow furrowing. "I'm sorry, but we're fully booked for the night." "Really?" "I saw online that you had rooms available," I said, my heart sinking. "Sometimes the system doesn't update in real time," he replied, shrugging. "But I can recommend a few places nearby." I hesitated, glancing around the empty lobby. Are you sure there's nothing? Just for one night? He studied me for a moment, then sighed. Well, we do have one room on the 4th floor. It's not ideal, but it's available. Great, I'll take it, I said, relief flooding. Great, I'll take it, I said, relief flooding through me. He handed me a key, the metal cold against my palm. Room 412. Just be careful. Don't open the door after 1 a.m. if someone knocks. I raised an eyebrow, confusion mingling with curiosity. Why not? He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. You'll understand when the time comes. Just don't open the door. I nodded, though his warning sent a shiver down my spine. I took the elevator to the 4th floor, the old machinery groaning as it ascended. The hallway was dimly lit, the flickering lights casting eerie shadows on the walls. I found my room at the end of the corridor, the door slightly ajar. Inside, the room was small but cozy, with a worn-out bed and a window that overlooked the dark woods. I dropped my bag on the floor and took a deep breath, trying to shake off the unease that clung to me. As the rain continued to pour outside, I settled onto the bed, flipping through the channels on the old television. Hours passed, and the storm raged on. I lost track of time, the sound of the rain lulling me into a restless sleep. It was just after midnight when I was jolted awake by a loud bang. My heart raced as I glanced at the clock. 1003 a.m. The memory of the receptionist's warning flooded back to me. I lay still, listening intently. The sound came again, a soft knock followed by a voice. Hello? Is anyone there? I sat up, my mind racing. Was it the receptionist? Had she come to check on me? I glanced at the door, my hand hovering over the knob. The warning echoed in my mind. Don't open the door. Hello, I need help, the voice called again, a hint of desperation creeping in. Please, I just want to talk. I hesitated, torn between curiosity and fear. What if she was in trouble? But then I remembered the man's warning. I picked up the phone, my fingers trembling as I dialed the phone, my fingers trembling as I dialed the reception desk. The line rang and rang, but no one picked up. Please, I can't stay out here much longer, the voice pleaded, now tinged with panic. I just need to talk to someone. I felt a pang of sympathy, but the fear was overwhelming. I'm sorry, I can't help you, I called out, my voice shaking. Why not? I'm just trying to get in. I promise I won't hurt you, she said, her tone shifting to one of urgency. You have to let me in. I pressed my back against the wall, my heart pounding in my chest. The knocking grew more insistent, echoing through the hallway. Please, I'm scared. I need to get inside. The desperation in her voice sent chills down my spine. I glanced at the door, now feeling like a barrier between me and whatever was out there. I can't open the door. I'm sorry. Why are you doing this? She cried, her voice breaking. You don't understand. They're coming for me. I felt a surge of panic. Who is coming for her? I wanted to help, but the man's warning echoed in my mind. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I can't open the door. I'm sorry. Let me in, and I'll show you, the voice replied, dripping with malice. You'll wish you had. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I couldn't stay here. I needed to get out. I grabbed my bag and rushed to the door, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the lock. But just as I was about to turn the knob, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. Let me in, the voice screamed, now filled with rage. You can't hide from me. I stumbled back, my heart racing as I fumbled for my phone, the screen illuminating the room in a faint glow. I could see the outline of the door, the shadows dancing around it. I pressed my back against the wall, my breath coming in short gasps. Suddenly, the power flickered back on and the lights returned, casting a harsh glare in the room. I could hear the sound of footsteps in the hallway echoing ominously. I held my breath, straining to listen. "Please, just let me in," the voice pleaded again, but now it was accompanied by another sound, a low, guttural growl that sent chills down my spine. I couldn't take it anymore. I rushed to the window, throwing it open and peering out into the storm. The rain lashed against my face and I could see nothing but darkness. I was trapped. The footsteps grew louder and I could hear the sound of something scraping against the door. My heart raced as I turned back to the room, searching for a way out. I grabbed the chair and wedged it against the door, my hands shaking as I tried to steady myself. "Let me in," the voice screamed again, now sounding almost like a growl. "You can't escape." I felt tears streaming down my face as I pressed my hands over my ears, trying to drown out the sound. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to get out. With a surge of determination, I pushed open the bathroom window, the rain pouring in as I climbed out. I could hear the voice screaming behind me, but I didn't look back. I scrambled down the side of the building, my heart racing as I hit the ground. I took off running into the woods, the rain soaking me to the bone. Finally, I collapsed against a tree, gasping for breath. I looked back toward the lodge, the dark silhouette looming in the distance. I could still hear the faint echoes of the voice, but they were fading away. I didn't stop to think. I stumbled back to my car, my hands shaking as I fumbled for the keys. I got in and started the engine, the sound of the car breaking the silence of the night. I drove away from Hollow Hill Lodge, the rain still pouring down, but I didn't care. As I left the lodge behind, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see someone standing in the shadows, but there was nothing, just the dark road stretching out behind me. From that day on, I still remained thinking about it. The voice, the warning, the feeling of being trapped. I never returned to Hollow Hill Lodge, but the memory haunted me. I would wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, the echoes of that voice ringing in my ears. What had happened in that lodge? Who was the woman? And what had she meant by, "They're coming for me"? I would never know. The questions lingered unanswered as I tried to move on with my life. But the shadows of Hollow Hill would always be there, lurking just beyond the edge of my memory, waiting for the moment I would forget the warning and return. Months passed since that harrowing night at Hollow Hill Lodge. I tried to forget, to push the memories deep into the recesses of my mind, but the experience had left an indelible mark on me. I found myself avoiding dark places, and the sound of rain would send me spiraling back to that night, the voice echoing in my ears. One evening, as I sat in my small apartment, the rain began to fall again. I stared out the window, watching the droplets race down the glass, and felt a familiar chill creep up my spine. I shook my head, trying to dispel the memories, but they clung to me like a shadow. "Just a lodge," I muttered to myself. "Just a bad experience." But deep down, I knew it was more than that. I had to confront it. I had to go back. The decision felt both liberating and terrifying. I discovered that Hollow Hill had a dark past, rumors of disappearances, strange occurrences, and whispers of a curse that hung over the land. The more I read, the more my anxiety grew, but I couldn't turn back now. Finally, the day arrived. I drove back to Hollow Hill, the familiar winding road feeling like a descent into madness. The trees loomed overhead, their branches swaying ominously in the wind. The flickering neon sign still read, "Vacancy," but the air felt different, thicker, charged with an unspoken tension. I parked and stepped out, the rain lightly falling, creating a mist that hung in the air. The lodge looked the same, but there was an unsettling aura surrounding it. I pushed through the heavy doors, the familiar scent of damp wood hitting me like a wave. The heavy-set man was still behind the desk, his expression unreadable. "I need a room," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He raised an eyebrow, his fingers tapping on the desk. "You know the rules." "I do," I replied, my heart pounding, "but I need to understand what happened." He studied me for a moment, then sighed. "Room 412 is available. Just remember what I said. Don't open the door after 1 a.m. I nodded, taking the key from him. "I won't." As I made my way to the 4th floor, the familiar sense of dread washed over me. The hallway was just as I remembered, dimly lit with shadows lurking in the corners. I reached my room and opened the door, stepping inside. The room felt colder than before, the air heavy with an unshakable tension. I dropped my bag and sat on the bed, staring at the clock. It was only 8 p.m., but I felt the weight of the hours stretching ahead of me. I needed to prepare for the night, to confront whatever was waiting for me. I spent the evening pacing the room, trying to distract myself. I flipped through the channels on the television, but nothing held my attention. The rain continued to pour outside, the sound echoing in the silence. As the hours passed, I felt a growing sense of unease. Finally, the clock struck midnight. I sat on the edge of the bed, my heart racing. I knew what was coming. I could feel it in my bones. The minutes ticked by slowly, each second stretching into eternity. At 1 a.m., the first knock came, a soft, tentative sound that sent chills down my spine. I held my breath, my heart pounding in my chest. The voice followed, sweet and soothing. "Hello, is anyone there?" I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. It was the same voice from before. I pressed my back against the wall, my mind racing. "I can't open the door," I whispered, though I knew she couldn't hear me. "Please, I need help," the voice pleaded, desperation creeping in. "I just want to talk." I glanced at the phone, but I knew it wouldn't work. I had to know what was happening. I took a deep breath, my hands trembling as I approached the door. "Why are you doing this?" the voice cried, now filled with urgency. "You don't understand. They're coming for me." I hesitated, torn between fear and compassion. "Who's coming for you?" I called out, my voice shaking. "Let me in and I'll show you," she replied, her tone shifting to one of desperation. "You wish you had." I felt a surge of anger. "You wish you had." I felt a surge of anger. "You're not real." "You're just a trick." The knocking grew more insistent, echoing through the hallway. "Please, I'm scared. I need to get inside." I pressed my back against the wall, my heart racing. I couldn't let fear control me. I had to know the truth. I turned the knob, my heart pounding as I opened the door. The hallway was empty, the flickering lights casting eerie shadows. I stepped out, my breath hitching in my throat. "Help me," the voice cried again, but it was coming from further down the hall. I followed the sound, my heart racing as I moved deeper into the darkness. "Where are you?" I shouted, my voice trembling. "What do you want?" "Please, I'm right here," she called, her voice filled with desperation. I turned a corner, and there she was, a woman standing at the end of the hallway, her face pale and gaunt. "Help me," she cried, her eyes wide with fear. I felt a rush of sympathy, but something in her gaze sent a chill down my spine. What's happening? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. They're coming for me, she screamed, her voice echoing in the empty hallway. You have to help me. I took a step closer, but she recoiled, her expression shifting to one of terror. No, don't come any closer. Why not? I asked, confusion flooding my mind. I want to help you, because they'll get you too, she cried, her voice breaking. You don't understand. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and I felt a cold breeze sweep through the hallway. I glanced around, my heart racing. What's happening? I shouted, panic rising in my chest. They're here, she screamed, her eyes wide with terror. Run! Before I could react, the shadows around us began to shift, coalescing into dark figures that moved with unnatural speed. I felt a surge of fear as I turned to run, but the shadows were faster. They closed in around me, their whispers echoing in my ears. Join us, they hissed, their voices a cacophony of despair. You can't escape! I stumbled back, my heart racing as I tried to find my way. The woman was gone, swallowed by the darkness. I could feel the shadows closing in, their cold fingers brushing against my skin. Help! I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the darkness. I ran down the hallway, the shadows chasing me, their whispers growing louder. Join us, they chanted, their voices a haunting melody. You can't escape. I burst through the door to my room, slamming it shut behind me. I pressed my back against the door, my heart racing as I tried to catch my breath. The shadows were outside, their whispers echoing in the hallway. Let me in, they cried, their voices a chorus of despair. You can't hide forever. I felt a wave of panic wash over me. I had to get out. I grabbed my bag and rushed to the window, throwing it open and peering out into the storm. The rain lashed against my face, but I didn't care. I had to escape. As I climbed out, I could hear the shadows screaming behind me, their voices filled with rage. You can't escape, they howled, their whispers echoing in the night. I scrambled down the side of the building, my heart racing as I hit the ground. I took off running into the woods, the rain soaking me to the bone. I could hear the shadows chasing me, their whispers growing louder. Join us, they cried, their voices a haunting melody. You can't escape. I ran until my legs felt like lead, until I could no longer hear their whispers. Finally, I collapsed against a tree, gasping for breath. I looked back toward the lodge, the dark silhouette looming in the distance. I could still hear the faint echoes of their voices, but they were fading away. I didn't stop to think. I stumbled back to my car, my hands shaking as I fumbled for the keys. I got in and started the engine, the sound of the car breaking the silence of the night. I drove away from Hollow Hill Lodge, the rain still pouring down, but I didn't care. As I left the lodge behind, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see someone standing in the shadows. But there was nothing. Just the dark road stretching out behind me. From that day on, I still remained thinking about it. The voice, the shadows, the feeling of being trapped. I never returned to Hollow Hill Lodge, but the memory haunted me. I would wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, the echoes of those whispers ringing in my ears. What had happened in that lodge? Who was the woman? And what had she meant by, "They're coming for me"? I would never know. The questions lingered unanswered as I tried to move on with my life. But the shadows of Hollow Hill would always be there, lurking. Thanks for watching. The veil between our world and theirs is thinner than you think. Each like, each share, each subscription strengthens the connection. Feed the channel before it feeds on you.